Nigeria is like a household that is not a family. There's a difference between a household and a family. You could have children of the same parents in one household, but if there's no cohesion, there's no unity of purpose, and they're working at cross purposes, such family will never make progress.
It becomes like an unhealthy amalgam of your willing.
Exactly. It becomes a house of commotion. But at the same time, you can have a coming together of people that are not necessarily people of same bloodline, but with well-defined ethos, and they form a family, well-bonded family, and they begin to work in sync with each other, harmonize each other's individual interests into their common interests, and go all out to achieve such interests, and they become prosperous. And I've had the argument severally too, that the reason for Nigeria's problem, the reason for Nigeria's disunity, the reason for Nigeria's inability to transform into a nation of citizens from a country of tribesmen has to do with our history. And that is why my column is actually titled Out of the Box, something similar to this podcast.
Oh, really?
Because we need to think outside of the box at this point to find solutions to our problems. And it begins with debunking some of these myths, some of these fallacies, putting our history in proper perspective so that when you urge people to embrace national unity and social cohesion, you're not urging them to commit suicide by their own perception. You are urging them to embrace life and living as it's supposed to be in the 21st century. So for instance, it's a fallacy. Anybody who tells you that Nigeria or Nigerians or the constituent peoples of Nigeria had nothing in common before 1914, for instance, there's this popular belief that the white man came and clubbed us together. We had nothing in common. We were disparate peoples. And so that is why it's difficult. And so people are saying, for instance, it's about you create states along all ethnic lines. As we've been saying, let us break up. We can never be one nation. And so this is a fallacy. This is actually opposite of what the reality was. Because our history, our customs, our tradition, our languages, and the proximity of our individual geography suggests otherwise. And clearly shows that long before 1914, there were interrelations between the constituent peoples of Nigeria through trade, through warfare, through diplomacy, through marital ties, and so on and so forth, even beyond the current borders of Nigeria into Cameroon, for instance, into Niger, into Benin Republic, and into Chad. So in fact, the cultural commonwealth that should have been Nigeria is actually incomplete within the current space. So meaning that we have even more in common than what divides us. So for me, Nigeria is like one black African family, a largely monoracial entity with the various sectional or ethnic groups simply a plurality of the same black African family. It's like having a bird with beautiful feathers. So it's one bird, but the plumages are simply a reflection of the beautiful feathers that makes up the beauty of such a bird. That is how Nigeria ordinarily is supposed to be. And evidence abounds to suggest this. I'll tell you this for free. Some people are today identified as Southern Nigerians, for instance. We are once Northern Nigerians, long before 1914. And in Africa, unlike what we have today, in ancient Africa, unlike what we have today, Africans had a traditional system of citizenship that ensures social cohesion, assimilation and integration seamlessly of anybody who moves from one part to the other. Something that we don't have today. Today, Nigeria still does not have democratic citizenship in its system, even though the constitution allows for that. So if you ask me, our ancestors were more civilized than those of us that are actually their descendants today.
Wow. Because
they communicated each other more. There was no settler indigenous dichotomy 100 years ago, 200 years ago. If that was the case, for instance, Oduduwa would not have left wherever he came from. Either from Benin, as some say, either from Mecca, as some say, from heaven, from somewhere in Ife or Mala in Kogi, wherever he came from, and settled in Ife, became king, and became the progenitor of an ethnic group. He was definitely not an indigenous of Ife. It did the same thing, for instance, for Bayajida, who was said to have come from the Middle East, and founded the 7 original Hausa states, and the not so original seven Hausa states. History also shows us clearly that there was a southward movement for the old Kwara region, the Jukun Confederacy, through the Benue Valley, across the Niger, to northern part of where you have Azibo land today. And they moved freely across both Anambra State, current Anambra State, and throughout the Anioma region. You have people from northern Nigeria that have seamlessly fused across the board. They are called the Igala people, for instance. It is also a fact that Arochukwu is the point of dispersal for the Efiks, the Ibibios, and the Aros across southeastern part of Nigeria. Evidence abound about our common ancestry. And that's why our languages are very similar. The only thing is we've not paid attention to our history enough to see the commonality in us enough for us to accept each other and understand that, look, when Azikiwe, who's from Onitsha, a part of southeast Nigeria, a part of Igbo land that traces its ancestry to Benin, partly, and another part of its ancestry to Ida in Kogi State, while the other parts of Onitsha also trace the ancestry to Arochukwu, that when he left Onitsha, for instance, and was born in Zungeru by his parents, and then he moved to Lagos to play his politics, he was simply what Yorubas would call Omowale. Because Benin Empire is ancestrally linked to the Yoruba-speaking part of Nigeria. So if a son of Benin, if a Benin man who became acculturated as an Igbo man in Onitsha and decided to come to Lagos to play his politics, he should have been regarded as a stranger, enough to cause hostility across the other half, which led to multiplicity of other problems. And this is the situation for all Nigerians. Anywhere you are found today in Nigeria, whether you are living in the north, living in the south, living in the east, you are supposed to be accommodated as a bona fide member of the family who simply have moved from one part of the family compound to the other. And that's why I was very amused when I see people laying exclusive claim to the territory of Lagos. And I say people don't even know the history of Lagos. Lagos represents the mosaic that is the cultural commonwealth of Nigeria long before 1914. In addition to the Aboriginal Aworis and the Egun people of Badagry, you had Yoruba-speaking communities that moved into the island to trade from the neighboring environment, or you can come from the Oyo Empire. But most importantly, it's also a historical fact that the Obaship of Lagos is a progeny of the Oba of Benin. You see the mix. It's also a fact that a prominent family such as the Osho, the Tapa family of Lagos, traced their origin to Bida, northern Nigeria. And that's why they are called Osho the Tapa. Tapa means Nupe in Yoruba parlance.
Osho the Tapa.
Osho the Tapa. Now, it might interest you to know that when the talk about Muslim ticket was so rife, that President Bola Tinubu was going to run with a Muslim from Borno, I chuckled that I told people that if only you know the history of the Tinubu family of Lagos, you will agree with me that it's not only a Muslim ticket, it's a Borno ticket, and it's a Kanuri ticket. Because the patriarch of the Tinubu family is actually Malam Mamudu Bagara from the old Kanem Borno Empire, who migrated to Lagos, married Madam Tinubu Efunre, the famous trader, who didn't give birth to a child for him though, but was allowed to marry other women and sell children that now took on her name. So the biological bloodline of the Tinubu family have their distant ancestry from the old Borno Kanem Empire, where Shetima comes from today. So Shetima and Tinubu are actually brothers, children of the same parents. But this is the truth of all of us as Nigerians. So I've also made this illustration to understand that Nigeria has no business not being a socially cohesive country, if only we realize that we're indeed essentially one people. And until we have this realization, something has gone wrong with our democracy. And our democracy is not going wrong. It's not wrong because of imperfect elections alone. There is something responsible for imperfect elections. You see, in 1960, because those who call our founding fathers failed to acknowledge this oneness and this commonality, so they negotiated from the British a country called Nigeria that was rigidly carved along ethno-geographic fault lines. So our federative units, from the regions to the provinces, down to native authorities were rigidly structured along ethnogeographic fault lines, which gave rise to a very debilitating phenomena in a democracy. Identity politics of ethnicity and religion. If there's any democracy that is caused, it is that democracy that is principally driven by identity politics of religion and ethnicity. Because it's always a zero-sum game. It is a majoritarian kind of democracy. So if you have an ethnic group that is dominant in a place, it will always win an election, whether or not the contestant is qualified for the office or otherwise. As what happens is this, the reward system, and this is the most important thing about our democracy, the reward system for identity politics is usually corruption, simple and short. So when you hear, I voted for the president, I worked for him, and I was not given appointment, I was not given enough contract, I've not carried along, it means on the table where the national cake is being shared, somebody has been outsmarted or overlooked. So it's about sharing. And that's why international scholars, in studying Nigeria's democracy, came up with another concept in political science. It's called prebendalism. And what is prebendalism? A situation that is uniquely Nigerian, interestingly. This is almost uniquely entirely Nigerian. Prebendalism is a situation where appointive and elective political office holders have a full sense of entitlement over their sphere of government influence. So for instance, if I'm a minister today, I'm expected to use that as a reward given to me for supporting the president. And what am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to be there to carry out any national assignment. I'm supposed to use that ministry to service my own section of the country. So for instance, if there will be an employment opportunity in my ministry, and I have 50 slots to be employed or to be filled, I'll make sure that my tribesmen get 45 of those slots. And if you complain to the president, he will not do anything because he understands that he too, as president, has also allocated more resources to his own home state or his own home region. He knows quite clearly. So this one is like pittance, the one that fell from the table that you too can also manage and go home and show. And when the next election comes, I have to go to the village and tell them, in the last 4 years, every year I bought 45 slots out of 50 for you people. That is on the basis upon which I'm going to negotiate power again for the next dispensation. So it's like a revolving door of corruption. So what has happened is that Nigeria has become less productive over time because we are now cuffed with crude oil. You don't have to work as a Nigerian politician. You don't have to pass good legislations. You don't have to make investment as a state government to make money every single month. Private operators drill our oil, pay us rent, and it is shared across board. So a governor needs not lift a finger to receive an alert of between 7 to 15 billion naira, as the case may be, every single month. He needs not do nothing. He doesn't need to go to the office any day of the month for this to happen. So the contestation for these resources, this revenue coming from our mono-resource economy, has become so fierce that we now have to deploy extraordinary means to outdo each other. That's why you see flawed election becoming a permanent feature in our democracy. That's why you see corruption being cultural in nature. AFC can only do the most they can do. It's cultural. It's a way of life. You are expected to do it. In fact, one of the most lucrative agencies in government today, people don't know, is the Federal Character Commission. Why? People are now rewarded with positions in Federal Character Commission on the basis of political patronage. So when they go there, what do? Simple. Ordinarily, they are supposed to monitor, make sure that nepotism of any kind does not happen in government agencies. But because they have interest, they have people to service too. They have nepotistic needs too, as per our identity political culture. So the first thing you do as a government agency is, if you want to employ more people in your village, just sprinkle a few slots to members of that commission. Once they get their own slots, they look the other way and give you a waiver, and you go ahead and do what you want to do. So the entire system has become enmeshed in this level of cultural corruption that is dispensed through government, that is transacted through politics, such that it's now hampering the effectiveness of the state to deliver on its primary responsibility, which is security and welfare. That's why you're having multi-dimensional security challenges in Nigeria that is becoming intractable. That is why the Nigerian state cannot take care of basic welfare needs of the citizens employment, food security, energy security, name it. And that's why Nigeria today is exhibiting, after 65 years of this level of misadventure, Nigeria is now experiencing symptoms of a state that is failing. Because when the state is unable to meet up its core responsibility, basic responsibility of enforcement of law and order, providing basic sustenance for citizens, such a state is exhibiting signs of failure. That is where we are. And to pull the brakes and prevent Nigeria from falling off the cliff, we need to rethink this fundamental problem. And to do this, the beauty of our democracy, the beauty of constitutionalism is such that it allows enough elbow room to maneuver and correct. It has a self-corrective mechanism. But the problem is, Nigerians have not even realized what the problem is. We think it is PDP between 1999 and 2015, so we threw Jonathan and PDP. Later, Buhari came, it was a messiah, but okay, Buhari was good, but the system was bad, so it's not the system. Today, we're also pointing out towards the President Tinubu. But I'm saying, yes, all of them are complicit in one way or the other, but they are simply products of a system. And for this system to be rejuvenated, we need to think outside of the box now on how to begin the gradual march towards nationhood, a nation of citizens, away from a country of tribesmen.
Pretty messed up, right?
Seriously.